We're Clayton and Courtney Small, and we planted the ARK Church in Magnolia, Texas in August of 2023.
In 2014, we felt like the Lord planted in our heart a seed to plant a church, and we were at a pastor's conference, and we remember what God was doing in that season of our life, and we had just heard of ARK and watched some of Chris Hodges' talks on planting a church, some of his original 8 talks, and we felt like the Lord was just planting a seed in our heart, and so for the next 10 years, it was just a process of chasing that out and learning how God would use that in our lives.
We were studying church planting, but we also wanted to be under a healthy, life-giving church that we wanted to be a part of. We came down to Houston and served as youth pastors on staff, and those pastors were so great to us. They equipped us, they challenged us, and they helped us grow, and then eventually sent us off to start the church.
I felt like we were supposed to launch in a desolate city. Ezekiel talks about a desolate city that becomes like a well-watered garden. And so we are in a very niche community that is fast growing. And as we drove through the community and as we were praying, we felt like God just opened our eyes and our heart to this community. And I know it was the Lord that led us here because there's no Starbucks and there's no Target when we planted the church. And my wife was hearing that we were supposed to come here. And part of that story for us was that we felt called to this city, in this community. And the founding verse behind the ARK Church is Hebrews 11:7, by faith Noah built an ark for the saving of his household. And we just knew we were called to be builders. We wanted to grow with a city that was going to grow. And we wanted to be there on the ground floor when it was undersaturated and just being in a place where we could grow with the community. And so Magnolia just really became that place for us. We began praying, and during that season, I had lunch with a pastor in town. On Sunday morning, he prayed with his congregation for a future church plant coming to Magnolia, and that was us. And in his congregation that day was a man who had been a pastor before. Their church had closed, and he had started a nonprofit in the building. And late one night, about 9 o'clock, I got a phone call from this pastor, and he called and he said, I hear you're planting a church in Magnolia. I own a building, and I want to rent it to you at a church planter's rate. And that just kind of began the conversation. We came and looked at the building, and as we walked in, we felt like our faith was screaming yes and excited, but at the same time, that was a really big faith step for us. And as you know, in planting season, there's all these what ifs and how are we going to do this? But God was stretching our faith. And so we leased that building, and we had 60 days to do a building remodel. That was going to cost about $250,000, and the Lord just sent the right people. One of the things we prayed early on was that the Lord would send every willing man with every kind of skill. And one of the people that God had sent as part of our launch team owns one of the largest construction companies in our community, and they came in free labor, and in 60 days we turned this place into a church that was ready to open on day one. And so one of our stories, or a part of our story, has been every time we step out in faith and make room, God fills it. And I'll never forget, there was a lady, she was about, 80 years old, on the back row of our launch Sunday. And when I was walking out, she grabbed me by the arm and said, any place that looks like this on the first day, I want to be a part of something like that. And that was just God's way of saying, hey, I see what you're doing and I see the faith that you're bringing to the table. And so we've seen 147 people be baptized in the first 18 months of the church, and we're watching what God is doing in people's lives, and it's been a joy.
We just found that God took care of everything, every step of the way. One of the ways He really did it was through our launch team. So we say all the time around here that it takes people to reach people, and so we had a heart to draw as many people onto that launch team as possible. And so we saw people drawn on our launch team, people who could help with special needs. We had somebody who was able to get us connections in the schools or with the city. We had people in construction. We just saw God's favor on that launch team. And so taking those big steps of faith and really depending on the Lord to develop that team and build that team was something that we really loved and enjoyed.
Yeah. There's a gentleman who came to our church, and he hadn't been to church in 60 years. and his family started coming to church, and they said, "Dad, we know you've tried church before, but this one you have to try. You just have to come see this." And so he started coming, and shortly thereafter he gets saved, and shortly thereafter he begins to share some of the story of his life and losing his wife. And he said, "You know, this last year has been the hardest year of my life, but I have to tell you, I've never been more happy in my entire life." And to think that it doesn't matter what a family looks like, whether that's, you know, in their late 70s or a young family with kids who comes through the doors of the church for the first time, seeing these families meet Jesus and their life being changed is just why we say yes.
ARK has been absolutely essential to us. There's no way that we could have launched the same way without the support and encouragement and strategy that ARK provided for us.
We really weren't trying to write our own script and do something nobody has ever done before. Our heart was, we want to pastor people. We want to love people. We want to love our community. And so we really did. We ran the play and it worked. And God breathed on the plan. God breathed on the play. And we've just been so blessed because of that. And when you plant a church, it's, you know, you may have been a part of a large church or a small church before, or been a part of different ministries. But for us, we were planting a church for the very first time. You have an 8-month runway to the plane taking off. And so for us, it was the fact that they had done it before. It gave us great confidence to know we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not trying to think of something nobody's ever thought of before. We just want to be able to love people and have church at the end of the day where we can introduce people to Jesus. And when I realized ARK was relational was the week we launched the church. And people can have slogans and visions written on the wall all day long, but when you feel it, it's different. And the week we launched the church, to have pastors of churches we didn't even know calling us on the phone to pray for a church in a city that they had never been to before or never even probably heard about, this country town. And that to me was so moving to me. In that, I've just realized just how important those relationships are. And so ARK has become that for us. And we're just forever thankful.